Hello, everyone. My name is Sherry Paula Watkins, and as Executive Director of North Carolina Humanities, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this evening's North Carolina Reads Book Club discussion of Welcome to the Circus of Baseball with Ryan McGee. This is the fifth and final book discussion of our 2024 North Carolina Read series, and we're so glad you are here with us this evening. We started North Carolina Reads in 2022 because at North Carolina Humanities, we believe in the power of books, reading, and stories. Now in its third year, North Carolina Reads features 5 books that explore issues of racial, social, and gender equity and the history and culture of North Carolina. We want to thank the individuals and communities across North Carolina whose enthusiasm for and participation in North Carolina Reads have helped this program grow and made North Carolina Reads a nationally award-winning program. We hope that tonight you feel connected to our guest speakers and each other and inspired to think about and empathize with the stories and experiences of others. Thank you again for being here this evening. Now it's my pleasure to turn the event over to Melissa Giblin, our director of the North Carolina Center for the Book, to finish our introductions. Melissa?
Thank you, Sherry Paula. I am Melissa Giblin, and I am so excited to begin this evening's conversation. As a nonpartisan statewide nonprofit and as North Carolina's affiliate of the National Endowment for the Humanities, our mission at NC Humanities is to connect North Carolinians with cultural experiences that spur dialogue, deepen human connections, and inspire community. This evening features a moderated discussion on Welcome to the Circus of Baseball, which is our 2024 North Carolina Reads selection for June. As a note about this evening's program, North Carolina Reads books are intended for readers 18 and over, and this program contains content that may be sensitive to some. We would like to acknowledge the National Endowment for the Humanities, the State Library of North Carolina, and McGuire Woods for their sponsorship support of this year's program. Please note any views, findings, conclusions, opinions, or recommendations expressed by our partners and participants do not necessarily represent those of NC Humanities or the National Endowment for the Humanities. We will briefly discuss a few housekeeping points for this evening's event and how to engage with us. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available after the live session on our YouTube channel. All 5 of the 2024 North Carolina Reads book events will be available on our YouTube channel. We encourage you to subscribe to that channel at NC Humanities. We'd love to hear from you during today's event. Please, if you have any questions, send those through the Q&A tab. I see a lot of folks already putting where they're joining from, so welcome this evening far and wide. You can put where you're joining from in the chat, maybe what favorite local baseball team you like to go see. We would love to hear that. Closed captions are available by clicking on the CC button at the bottom of your screen, and we encourage you to share your experience on social media by tagging at NC Humanities on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Before we begin, we have a special guest this evening who will be making a few remarks. It is my pleasure to welcome Hannah Martin, the Assistant General Manager of the Asheville Tourist, to share some words about McCormick Field and the team. Welcome, Hannah.
Thanks, Melissa. Thanks for having me. As Melissa said, I am Hannah Martin, the Assistant General Manager of the Asheville Tourist, and I've been with the team for about 9 years now, but this season is really extra special to us. The rest of our staff, our community, and our fans, because we are celebrating the 100th year anniversary of McCormick Field this year. So something really cool to be a part of. But for those who are familiar with the ballpark, I saw in the chat a few saying they grew up in Asheville. So for those that are familiar with the ballpark or have read Welcome to the Circus of Baseball, then you probably know that McCormick Field opened 100 years ago in 1924, making it one of the oldest ballparks. And one thing that I said as I was reading the book and when I finished the book that I think, Ryan, you did a fantastic job of was making the Asheville Tourist and McCormick Field something you feel very proud to be a part of, and that transcends all levels. You know, maybe I'm biased because I worked there for almost a decade, but the fans too, and the community and game day employees. So one thing that, we are very proud of is the history behind McCormick Field. So as we were prepping for the 2024 season, that was in our minds. How can we spotlight and feature all that McCormick Field has to offer and all that it's been through in the past 100 years? So a few things that we were able to do. We held an exhibition game on April 3rd, 2024, which was 100 years to the day of the opening of McCormick Field. So something super cool to be a part of. But as we were thinking of ways to celebrate and build on that, we decided to use a reverse inflation calculator to try and estimate what a ticket costs in 1924. And so what we came up with was 75 cents. So we sold almost all tickets for 75 cents. And when we went live on the day of ticket sales, we sold out the ballpark in about 50 minutes. So people were thrilled and just really bought in to that day as a whole and how special it was. We're doing a few giveaways that really highlight the teams that have played at McCormick. So the Skylanders, so the name of the team when McCormick Field opened in 1924, or you had the Asheville Orioles, which is what the team was named between 1972 and 1976, at which point you had Cal Ripken Sr. managing during a few of those years, Cal Ripken Jr. being a bat boy. So again, just more greatness and history to come through McCormick Field. You have the Asheville Blues, so the team that was a part of the Negro Southern League and won the championship in 46 and 47. So again, really just using 2024 to highlight the history of McCormick Field. And in an old ballpark, a lot of the things that Ryan detailed in the book still stand, and very truthfully, meaning the physical infrastructure, but also a lot of the feelings that he described in the book as well, the nostalgia, the community, the tradition. So we're just very thankful to our fans, like Melissa said, near and far, who have supported us throughout the years. And as we get ready to kind of embark on construction and renovations in September, we're excited to build on the history and the tradition of McCormick and carry that in future years. So thanks for having us. Thanks to Ryan for writing this book and really highlighting what minor league baseball is and all that it can be in Asheville and McCormick Field. So yeah, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Hannah, for sharing the history of McCormick Field and what you all have been working on in the team, and looking forward to hopefully another 100 years for you all as you move forward with all of your plans for the future. So thank you for sharing that. If you are in Asheville visiting, check and see if the tourists are in town, head out to a game. If you're not, look for one in your local community, and just head out to a baseball game and have some fun. So thank you, Hannah. And now to introduce our speakers for tonight's discussion. We'll start with Ryan McGee, who is a senior writer for ESPN and co-host of Marty and McGee on ESPN Radio and the SEC Network. He has won 5 sports Emmys, including 2 for his script writing and feature work on College Game Day. He has authored several books, including co-writing the New York Times bestseller, Racing to the Finish with NASCAR superstar Dale Earnhardt Jr. He also works as a field reporter for ESPN SportsCenter and is a feature reporter for E60. And he lives in North Carolina with his family. Dr. Nicholas Buzzelli is an assistant professor of sports media at High Point University, where he teaches courses in journalism and strategic communication. Previously, he was a faculty member at Mississippi College after receiving his PhD in communication and information sciences from the University of Alabama in 2022. His research primarily focuses on sports journalism processes and norms and the impact of technology on sports writing. So welcome to you both this evening.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, we'll dive right in for our eager audience here. So I'm going to start, Ryan, with you. Just kind of tell us what led you to write about your experiences and welcome to the circus of baseball.
Well, and I'm full uniform tonight, right? So I've got my tourist, Beer City ball cap. I got my Teddy tourist, old school T-shirt. But I because I grew up in the Carolinas, my professional baseball is minor league baseball, and my father played college baseball at East Carolina. My brother went to Wake Forest, but we didn't have the Braves in Atlanta. That was kind of it. And so I was a Boston Red Sox fan growing up because my first T-ball team when I was 5 years old in Shelby were the Red Sox. That's it. It wasn't more common. They pulled a hat out of a box. I could have very easily been a Padres fan. They were pulling hats out of boxes, put it on your head. But we didn't have Major League Baseball. What we did have was in almost every single town throughout the Carolinas and really throughout the Southeast was a minor league baseball team. And so that's what we did as a family. Our hobby in the summertime was collecting minor league ballparks. And we get the map and we get the Baseball America directory. And we'd say, well, I see they've got a team in Fayetteville this year. The Fayetteville Generals, never been there. They got a game Tuesday night. So we would drive from Raleigh or Shelby or where we were living at the time. And minor league baseball is what I loved. And we would keep track of how good was the hot dogs and what music did they play and what giveaways did they have and the creativity of it. And also I'm a kid of the 80s. So this is right when Bull Durham dropped, right in the mid 80s, that amazing movie. Movie was shot in Durham in the mid 80s. And I was living in Raleigh as a kid. I still have, I'm at the beach right now. I have this old school, this is probably from about 1985, 86, because this beach house is a time capsule. But minor league baseball is what I grew up with. So to have the opportunity to work in minor league baseball, even for one summer, was a dream come true. And about a month into the summer, I started taking notes because the characters made Bull Durham. I mean, we were way more colorful than that, right? Even just the people that you ran into on a nightly basis. So I started writing stories down and I started collecting stories. And I was like, one day, maybe somebody would like to read this. And then I was fortunate enough, I was asked, what's the book you've always wanted to write? And this was it. And so this was a labor of love for me. I mean, gosh, all the way back to the summer of 94 when I was in Asheville. So that's a really long way of saying, Melissa, I wrote way too much stuff down, much to my wife's chagrin. I keep everything. And so I had a plastic bin of stuff from that summer. And when I had the opportunity to finally write the book, it was all right there. It honestly wasn't that difficult. So labor of love because I love it so much. And I still to this day, when I book my travel for ESPN in the summertime, if I'm going to work on a story previewing college football, or I was just in Omaha for the College World Series, I will look at the minor league baseball schedule. And if there's a team within a few hours of where I am and I have a night off, I'm going to go because I'm going to collect. I'm up to about 136 minor league ballparks now, and I'm not going to stop. They keep adding teams, and so I'm going to keep finding ballparks to go to.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Ryan. I think that's a great piece of insight because I was wondering, and I'm sure some in our audience were too, is how did you have such recollection of all those details, given the time that had passed from when you were having your internship with the tourist to when the book was written. So I think that's fascinating that you just were not secretly, but like furiously recording everything down in hopes that.
And I'm not a journaler. I never have been, but there was something about that summer. I'm fortunate. I have a good memory. I have a great memory for things that don't matter, right? I can't remember, April 15th when you turn taxes in, but I can remember, stuff that happened to me in the summer of 94. And it was great. And listen, the reality is that Hannah could write a book, right? Anyone who's ever worked in minor league baseball, whether it was for a year, but certainly the people like her who have dedicated their lives and their careers to this business, they could all write books. I wrote a book several years ago with my father, who was a college football official, an ACC football official. Everyone who's ever refereed any sport could write a book. We just were fortunate that we were given that platform. And that's why it was so critical for me to make sure I did right by those people, the lifers. I was only there one summer, but yeah, I like I say, as my wife will tell you, my office is like a storage unit. I have way too much stuff, but it helps you if you're writing a book about something that happened 30 years earlier.
Yes, it definitely does. So let's delve into some of those kind of details of the book. And Nick, I'm going to start with you for this question, and then we'll loop Ryan in. So Ryan, of course, describes McCormick Field, which we just heard Hannah talk about, celebrating its 100th year this year as the perfect ballpark. So what to you makes a minor league ballpark memorable and enjoyable? or what did you kind of learn about minor league ballparks from kind of having read this book?
Yeah, no, I think Ryan touched upon it perfectly. It's the history, right? Like there are minor league teams come and go. Obviously, Asheville, the Tourists have been there for a long, long time. But I think like with any ballpark, you have the new, you have the ballparks that have been there maybe 30, 40 years, and then you have the ballparks that are celebrating their 100th anniversary and, even a little bit older. So I think definitely the history is kind of what makes that atmosphere and that experience. Because you could go to a game and it could be a brand new park, it could have the best concessions, the nicest restrooms, all the stops, bells and whistles. But I think like really if you kind of get down in the nitty-gritty, like the stuff that has the character, the ballparks that have the history that you can look up online or on a plaque and see the historical players who played there. I think that is kind of what really makes it. And I think a good example that happened last Thursday, 6 days ago, if anyone caught it, but the Major League Baseball held a game between the Giants and Cardinals at Rickwood Field in Birmingham, Alabama. And, celebrating the history of what is the oldest documented ballpark still in use. That was built in 1910. So obviously it's not currently hosting any minor league teams calling it a permanent home. But I think like if you look at that ballpark or if you look at McCormick Field or kind of any of the other ones, like that is kind of what makes minor league baseball unique. Because if you look at other minor league sports across the landscape, like, the G League or, the
Oh, we've had Nick.
the sports, you're not going to really find old venues, right? Like something like basketball or hockey, they're going to be fairly newish. But I think that's kind of what makes baseball unique and what really makes it stand out is you can have these old ballparks in one league, and then you could go to a brand new ballpark and they're in the same division. So kind of that character and that history, I don't think you get anything like it in sports.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to direct that same question to you, Ryan, as you kind of reflect on McCormick Field, and you noted it was the perfect ballpark. So since you mentioned traveling to a lot of different ballparks, what makes McCormick Field special for you in your mind?
Well, Nick's exactly right. It's character. And we see it in brand new facilities. And I live in Charlotte. I'm a proud season ticket holder of the Charlotte Knights. And the ballpark they were in forever down in Fort Mill, South Carolina, didn't have a lot of character. The ballpark they're in now, if anyone's been there, throughout North Carolina now, we have these. By the way, this is my dog, which she decided she's going to fist. That's Lizzie. But I think about, Greensboro. That ballpark is relatively new. But there it sits open to that skyline, and it sits right there where you can walk to it, and you watch and see what's happened with the neighborhood around it, in the last several years. That's great. What they've done in Fayetteville, what they've done. I mean, you go to Kinston, right? Home of the Down East Wood Ducks for now, and that ballpark has been there forever, and there's so much character. Now, you're sacrificing a little bit, right? I mean, at McCormick Field, that concourse is not very big. If you want concessions, you got to go downstairs to get them because the ballpark is literally carved into the side of a mountain. But the trade-off is you get to sit in that bowl and look at the same field where Ty Cobb played and Jackie Robinson played and Willie Stargell was the greatest player in tourist history, Todd Helton, Craig Biggio, and you get the view of the mountain. I mean, so to me, it's about character. And what's happened, and we've seen it in Major League Baseball too, is we have a lot of brand new ballparks, and Major League Baseball now is as they're learning in Asheville, they're now saying you have to make these improvements to your ballpark if you want to keep your team. However, the good news about this renovation is, and it's what they're doing in Asheville starting this fall, the soul of the ballpark will still be there. My favorite sporting venues are the ones that you walk into and you can feel it even when it's empty, right? Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Augusta National, Fenway Park in Boston, Wrigley Field. But when you walk in, the ghosts are there, right? And they're there whether there's a game going on or they're there whether the place is empty. And if you get the chills when the place is empty, then you've got something special. And McCormick is one of those places.
Yeah, that's a great feel. And I know many communities feel that way, that these are, historic parts of their community that, have meaningful history, or that if it's newer, it's working towards building that story, right? Of that this is the gathering place for the community. We were just chatting earlier about, how facilities are used in the off season, right?
Yep.
The Knights did a lot with, hockey and do a lot of things in the different seasons where the game is not actually being played there at that time. So, they definitely work their way into a part of our fabric of community. All right. So Nick, I'll go back to you here. The book details all of the work required to host baseball games for an entire season. So what is going on in the front office, the ticket sales, the grounds, the maintenance, the concession, all of that. Was anything surprising about how much work is involved in the day-to-day running of a minor league baseball team?
I think the part of the book in that regard that I really loved was about the tarp pulling. And Ryan, you're on another Zoom call about a month ago. You mentioned how you had a friend who had like the tarp crew T-shirt, and you still hung on to like
just a few weeks ago. My old college roommate, who's a professor at the Air Force Academy, we went to a game at McCormick. Hannah was nice enough. The staff was to hook us up with tickets, and he wore his tarp crew T-shirt from Nights honor, and they still do up there.
Like, I thought that was fascinating because Hannah could probably speak to this more. Not really sure if that is still a thing in baseball where they'll bring down fans from the stands to kind of help for the field if there's going to be a rain delay, but like little things like that, like, I felt that you detailed very, very thoroughly, kind of like the ins and the outs. So like the tarp crew and field maintenance part, the little anecdote about the ice cream machine breaking and having soft serve all over. And so I think like that is kind of the charm, right, if you will, of like working in minor league baseball. And obviously you and Hannah can speak more to this, but you have to wear many hats. And as a professor, I have students who are looking for internships, and I always try to push them to minor league sports, whether that is baseball or another sport, because I think like from that standpoint, a lot of kids in college might want to go straight to the pros. You got to kind of work your way up, and it's that realization, because you have to learn to do it all, really, because before you specialize in one area of work, you got to know how to run cash register in concessions. You have to know how to pull a tarp. You have to know how to drive the infield and get the pitcher's mound just right. So I think like just the inner workings of what you described vividly is what a lot of people who don't have that background in baseball or background in working in minor league sports, what they kind of need to know, or what is important to kind of understand all of the day-to-day work that goes into getting ready for a game.
I say the same thing all the time about, like, I'm very fortunate to work for ESPN, but I would not trade my experience at the Monroe Inquirer Journal for anything, or at WIXE Radio in Monroe for anything, or carrying tripods for the sports camera crews at WRAL in Raleigh when I was a teenager. I wouldn't trade that for anything. And so I'll tell you a funny story. So you're talking about the tarp. There's two stories about me and the tarp in the book, where the tarp almost killed me. And then I would argue that the ice cream machine, the Dairy Queen saucer machine, it didn't almost kill me, but it did hurt me pretty bad. And I write these stories. I did Dan Levitard's show, my former coworker from ESPN, who's still a really popular sports talk guy. And we were promoting the book a year ago, and Dan goes, "I gotta be honest with you, Ryan, this all sounds terrifying. Was it actually fun?" And I'm like, "It was the most fun I ever had in my life." And they paid me $100 cash. So yeah, it's good to be 24 and made out of rubber. But the tarp, I don't believe, Melissa, by the way, that they pull the fans down from the stands for liability reasons. But I would say to a fan in the stands, if they ask you to pull the tarp, always say yes, because you might not get a T-shirt out of it, but you're certainly going to have a story for the rest of your life.
So Ryan, I'm gonna maybe expand on that a little. While you were kind of learning the ropes in this ballpark, was there anything that you had reservations about, or like, because this was just your first internship, where you're like, well, I got to do it if that means fixing the ice cream machine or pulling that tarp, like I'm just gonna do it? But was there anything at the time that you were like, wow, I'm very surprised that I have to do this, it's a little unbelievable?
Yeah, honestly, the most daunting thing for me was like helping with sales. Like, I understand. I love soft serve ice cream, right? I love Dairy Queen. I'll learn how to work the machine works. I wasn't a big partier in college, but I figured out how to change out 70 beer kegs on a thirsty Thursday. All the college students wanted to drink. But the most daunting thing for me was going on sales calls. I'm terrible at sales. I'm still terrible at sales. And so when I'm having to go on a sales call with my bosses at the time, who were really, really good at sales, and I'm having trying to convince some guy to buy this billboard or to do whatever. Like, for example, one of the first tasks we had was to go around to all the local businesses and try to ask them to put just the pocket schedules, and this one old boy ran us out of his gas station out in the mountains of North Carolina. Like, I don't know what firearm he had under the counter, but there was definitely something. And so we got out of there. But it was that, to me, it was that part of it. It was the stuff I didn't understand, that scared me to death. But yeah, I mean, listen, this is in the book, when we're pulling the tarp and there's a thunderstorm coming and the wind gets under the tarp, and I literally was holding on to the edge of it, and my feet were 7 feet above the ground. At that point, I probably, was thinking, I might be, I'm not in over my head. I'm literally in over the ground. So at that point, I'm thinking, maybe this isn't for me.
That's really good. I think I would love to expand on that even more and say, are there experiences from your time working with the tourists that maybe you use even today?
Every day. Even though I was working for a Class A minor league baseball team, to Nick's point, I understand what it takes to run a stadium. Because the fundamentals of how an NFL game is operated from the boots on the ground level at Bank of America Stadium is exactly like it was at McCormick Field for a game between the Greensboro Bats and the Asheville Tourists, because the fundamentals are the same. And so I think it helps me appreciate it. I think as a sports fan, when you just buy your ticket and go to the game, I think as a member of the media that just goes to games and sits in press boxes, whatever else, I think a lot of my colleagues kind of take for granted, as we all do, all of the work that takes place. But like, for example, I was at the College World Series last week, and to get to the press box, we literally had to walk the length of the stadium in the tunnel, where they're getting the concessions ready, and where they're getting ready to take the food to the suites, and where they're got the mops going, and where they're ready for the grounds crew. And I talked to all of them, because I feel like, even though I was there for one summer, I kind of get it, and so it helps me appreciate on a daily basis. And just the business part of it, like the sales aspect. I might not agree with the way that a sports league or a sanctioned body or a facility or a team goes about their business, but I also at least understand on the most basic level of how it works. So I appreciate it. And so, yeah, I tell you, I think easily I take that knowledge with me every single day in what I do now.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you for sharing that. So Nick and Ryan, you both mentioned kind of the character of the baseball stadiums and the history that you can kind of get the sense of there. So Nick, I want to ask you, why do you think baseball appeals across generations and social classes and is still seen as America's pastime? This is going to be a couple part question, so we may just go back and
So to answer the first part about across generations, I mean, I think baseball is still, even though from the sporting landscape, it's the NFL is kind of taking over as, arguably the most popular sporting event to watch in the US, but you still have something that you can share with the older generation. So like if you're a kid growing up, you might get into Little League as a kid, and then you could talk baseball with your grandfather or a great uncle or whomever. So I think like from that perspective, you have people who can reminisce the older generation about the quote unquote golden age of baseball in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And, the stories and the legends and, the players who play, they're still notable. And you can still kind of talk about that and, reminisce. And the beauty of something like YouTube, you go on and, watch the old broadcast, or, watch a little 8mm reel of a game from 1957, a little clip here and there. And so I think that's something like just, it brings people together. And, from the second part of the question about minor league baseball, bringing people together and just having something for a family aspect. And Ryan, I thought you did a really great job of touching upon it earlier when you're talking about how you and your family would go, and it was something that you can do, and you had the little rating system, which I loved, such a cool idea. But I think that's something like when you think about like a family, even if you live near a major league ballpark, costs prohibitive, you might not be able to afford to go take a family afford to a game, between the Reds and the Pirates or the Braves and the Marlins. So I think minor league baseball is great at that because it gets the kids out, and, a lot of stadiums have kind of catered to that family aspect. And, I know quite a few have little playgrounds installed in the outfield for kids to, play on if they're losing interest in the game, and the promotions and kind of what Ryan talked about, love the little anecdote at the beginning of the book with the, blank on his name, but the Daredevil guy.
Captain Dynamite, Captain Dynamite and his exploding coffin of death. Yes.
Yeah, like little things like that. Like I think that is really what is the gem of minor league baseball, is that you can do these things, you can have these wacky promotions to get people in the door, and it works, it holds their attention, and it can get people to come back because it's something fun to do with the family, and it doesn't break the bank.
And that's it. I mean, it's accessibility. I mean, for the price, my dad and I went and saw the Atlanta Braves in their new ballpark. It's amazing, and the whole area around it is amazing, but it costs a lot of money, and I got connections, I got people, right, and it still costs a lot of money. Well, for the price to go see the Braves play maybe 2 games on the weekend, you can get season tickets to the Crawdads in Hickory, and so I think it's accessibility. You can still take your family cheap. You can still get everybody 4 tickets and 4 hot dogs and 4 drinks, and probably get a giveaway item at the door, and maybe see, the modern day equivalent of Captain Dynamite and his exploding coffin of death. And you can do it cheap. And so I think and there's also, Melissa, your question, I think that you can also just chill. That's why it's the pastime. It's not America's sport. It's not America. It's the pastime. And so if you can go to a game and just be, because the reality is, if you are a fan of the, if you're a fan of the, the Kannapolis Cannonballers, or if you're a fan of the Durham Bulls, or a fan of, the Carolina Mudcats, you hope they're good. But the reality is you don't care, because you're just going to chill out, and you can just be for a few hours. You don't have to worry about everything that's going on in the world, and you can do it with your family. And so to me, it's the accessibility of it. And it's just, all we want right now with all the noise in the world is to be able to just chill. And I think that at a minor league ballpark, nobody's talking about labor union disputes. Nobody's talking about the election. Nobody's talking about anything. They're just chilling and watching baseball, and your kids are having a good time. You don't have to worry about them. And to me, that was the same when Ron McGee first took over with the tourists in the 70s. And it's the same if you go to McCormick Field right now.
And real quick, I think I'm sorry, to piggyback off that, I love how you brought up like the pastime, and that's also like minor league baseball. You can go, and you don't have to, not that you don't have to pay attention to the game, but you can just go and, talk to your buddies and hang out, and you're hanging out, and there's a baseball game going on in the background. And, I think like for pretty much any other sport, like, the action is so fat, you're going to be glued, you're going to be paying, but like for a baseball game, you can just, like you said, chill. You can just sit there and talk to your friends, talk to your family. And then, the ball gets put in play, you look up, you watch what happens, and then you go back to your conversation. And like, there's no other sport out there that can mimic that.
Yeah, there's definitely a really good active, pulling in of the community members. We attended a game in Kannapolis, and they had the kids racing around the fields in those little breaks, or, having them come out and do little activities, and they were just having the best time, right? The families are there, the friends are there. It's really kind of crosses, age and all of those factors that I think, like you said, it's just very accessible. There's one in almost every community. We have a lot in North Carolina. I think it's 10 minor league ballparks in North Carolina. Yeah. So accessible, for a lot of communities. So I do want to spend some time talking about the talent acts and different marketing things. So I've got kind of a series of questions here. So I'll try to kind of break it up for you all. Ryan, of course, details with the, and I joked right from the beginning, how baseball teams often booked different talent acts to perform and engage with fans at baseball games, and use those unique marketing tactics like Thirsty Thursdays to draw in those fans. So talk about some of that marketing that Ryan describes in the book, Nick.
Yeah, no, I thought you did a great job, because when you're talking about whether it was Captain Dynamite, Thirsty Thursday, and then the Blues Brothers tribute, which I'm blank. I don't know if they had a special name or if it was literally just the Blues Brothers tribute, but
the Blues Brothers act. because
Brothers
it gets a little weird legal with legal stuff. But it was, yeah, they're the Blues Brothers Act, and originally it was a much longer name, but yeah, so they weren't the Blues Brothers; they were the Blues Brothers Act.
But I think like little things like that, right? Like for marketing and what we talked about earlier with minor league baseball appealing to families and the price, but you also have to provide that entertainment because you're not going to go to a major league game and expect someone to blow themselves up on the infield or a dance contest in the in between the fifth inning. So I think like little things like that, marketing just helps to put people in the seats. And Hannah talked earlier about the I think she called it like the turn back the clock pricing for McCormick's 100th anniversary with the 75-cent tickets, like, and how it sold out in 50 minutes. And I think little things like that, when you're trying to market and, even in North Carolina, you have so many minor league teams that you still have to find a way to stand out. Like I am in the High Point area, so we have the independent High Point Rockers down the street, but then you go 20 minutes to the north and you have the Winston-Salem Dash, and then at 20 minutes in the other way, you have the Greensboro Grasshoppers. So I think like even within that, you have 3 minor league teams within, 20, 30 minutes of each other. So I think marketing at the minor league level is super important because you have to find these little unique ways to get people in the door. And not only that, but get them to come back. When you have a lot of, I guess, for lack of a better term, competition in the area and possibly a lot of overlap if the Grasshoppers, the Dash, and the Rockers all have a game on a Friday night. What are the little things that you can do to get people to want to come back? And I think that's where the marketing aspect and, minor league baseball gets to have fun with that. And I think that's, another cool thing about it that you don't see pretty much at any other level of baseball and definitely not at too many other versions of sport.
Yeah. So Ryan, same kind of question to you. You detailed a lot of the, anecdotes that were very funny, the Captain Dynamite and, the Thirsty Thursdays, and you're rolling out these kegs, like fighting for your life with the kegs and the keg. So just talk a little bit more about those as your experiences.
Well, it's the creativity of it. And, and so for folks to know, any minor league game you go to, you'll have a Thirsty Thursday. And that's the night that the drinks are cheap. Well, Ryan McGee, who was my boss, was the general manager of the Asheville Tourists in the book. Ron came up with Thirsty Thursday. And Ron actually, at one point, had a trademark. When you go into the Asheville Tourist office where Hannah works, there's a plaque version of this trademark. So every minor league team, major league team, whatever, pays a little money, to the Ron McGee group, when they do that. But it's the creativity of it. And it's to Nick's point, you're competing for people because in North Carolina in particular, we have these clusters. We have a lot of teams down east, right? And then we have a lot of teams in the Piedmont. We have teams in the Southern Piedmont. Certainly have a lot of up in the Triad. And so you have to compete with the creativity of it is my favorite part. I remember I was, I go to Omaha every year for the College World Series. And for years, Rosenblatt Stadium was the home of the College World Series, but also the home of the Omaha Royals, their local team. Well, lightning struck the ballpark the last night of the College World Series. They had no power for the Omaha Royals like the next night. So what they do, they turn it into throwback night. And the guy would stand out there with a megaphone and announce the score. And every time somebody would announce the lineups and, paper tickets and everybody's keeping score. And so it's the creativity of it and the spur of the moment creativity of it. I mean, I've seen teams come up with stuff at the last possible second, to get eyeballs and to get people in there. And so that part of it is my favorite part. And yeah, the roaming acts are the best. Again, you go back to Bull Durham and you see the greatest of all time, Max Patkin, the clown prince of baseball. And Max toured all the way in his 70s. In fact, he's in the book. His I think it was last year, or next to last year was this year, and I got to eat lunch with him at the winter meetings. And the winter meetings, that's where everybody showed up and they pitched their act or they pitched their products. I remember Morgana the Kissing Bandit, and I'll let y'all Google her. Maybe have your safe search on when you do it. But Morgana is the one that will run out onto the field unexpectedly during Monday Night Baseball on ABC and try to kiss Pete Rose or try to kiss Nolan Ryan. Well, you could hire Morgana to come out and spontaneously run out onto the field and kiss your pitcher. And oh, by the way, she also sold Morgana's peanuts. And so if you would sell those, you probably get a discount or have Morgana there. So yeah, the Blues Brothers Act, you had different tiers of it. You could hire the San Diego Chicken, arguably the most, certainly at that time, the most notable mascot in the world, or You could pay another minor league mascot. Homer the Dragon from Charlotte could come up and work at your smaller minor league team. Or if you didn't have a lot of money and you needed something for the homestand, you could get Captain Dynamite, who would just show up in a station wagon. Pretty sure his explosives crew were his grandkids and his wife, and they would construct this. There was the opening scene of the book. They construct this coffin of death, which was just fiberglass out on the field, and he'd lay down in that thing and blow himself up. And literally the first words in the book are us saying a bad word. I think it says SOB might really be dead. And I think he cost $500 cash. So it was, but then the Blues Brothers act or the San Diego Chicken or Max Packet will cost you a lot more than that. So just like anything else, if you pay a lot of money, you could go see Taylor Swift. If you pay a little bit of money, you can go see the Taylor tribute to Taylor Swift, Sailor Twift down here at the county fair. We had a lot of Sailor Twifts coming through in Asheville because we didn't have a lot of money, so we couldn't afford her for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So talk about maybe a little bit when, I don't want to say marketing goes wrong, but I think you detail, speaking of mascots, a brawl between some mascots.
Yeah. So just down the road from Nick, I think we had some people from Hickory, if I saw right in the chat. So the Hickory Crawdads in the summer 1994, and I apologize, by the way, y'all, I'm at the beach and I got some sunscreen in my eye. So I'm not crying because I'm emotional about our conversation. I literally got sunscreen in my eyes. So I keep doing that. But so the summer 94, the Hickory Crawdads were in their second season at LP Franz Field, which is a great ballpark, overlooks the river. It's fantastic. And they were they should still, Nick, they still should teach the way that the Crawdads launched that baseball team, because the logo was amazing. The Crawdads, they sold gear and stuff all over the world. And in 1994, they hosted the South Atlantic League All-Star Game. Well, part of the Sally League All-Star Game, really any All-Star Game, is they'll bring out all the mascots, right? And put them all on the field at the same time. And so we had Ted E. Tourist. So this is, if you're watching, this is Ted. This is actually the baseball card. That's me actually as Ted, because the guy that was supposed to be Ted didn't show up for baseball card day. That's why I was real skinny then. So that's why it barely fits me. But all right, so this big giant head, right? You can't really see what's going on. Anyone who's ever put a mascot head on. So we put all these mascots out on the field and we line them up to take a picture. Someone got mad at someone else and a shoving match started. And you got the Spartanburg Filly, which was a horse that basically was just a big road cone with the horse head on it. And then you got Ted. And then you got we had the Albany Polecats, and that was a skunk. And so you got all these guys, all these heads, the Hagerstown Sun, which was like this big, Louis the 16th looking sun with, these big tentacles on it or whatever, that was solar flares. They can't see anything. And so someone pushes someone else, someone pushes another. Next thing you know, we had a brawl that started between all these mascots. And the best part of it was, we call it the Battle of Hickory, by the way. The best part of it was they all had big smiles on their faces. And you could hear them screaming and cussing at each other. And you could see them pushing and shoving and punching and whatever else. But everyone just had a big, giant smile on their face because, they're the mascots. They're excited to be there. So I wrote an entire chapter about this battle. And to give you a little inside baseball on the publishing industry, my sample chapter, right? So when you do a book proposal and you send it out with your agent to different publishers and, all right, what are we going to do? They want you to write a sample chapter. My sample chapter was the Battle of Hickory. The story of the Battle of Hickory, even though it didn't happen in Asheville, is what got the book deal done. And so that's why throughout the book, there's this countdown. If you go back and read the book, in each chapter, there's like this happened, but it wasn't the biggest thing we saw all summer. And so we kind of do this countdown now to the Battle of Hickory. And it was, and it's interesting too, because a lot of the people who were there that day were just starting out like I was, and they've become executives, throughout minor league baseball. And there's a lot of varying recollections of how that went down. But I always say, as with any great battle in history, no one remembers it the exact same way. And the Battle of Hickory, that's the way that I remember it.
Yeah, well, thank you for expanding on the battle and that that aspect of the marketing. Nick, with kind of your background in journalism, I did want to pose this, and Ryan, I'll bounce it back to you as well. What do you make of current minor league baseball teams? And I'm going to highlight one in particular because they seem to be all over social media, kind of doing their thing. And that's the Savannah Bananas, which, speaking of an amazing mascot, becoming social media sensations and wildly popular in their community, and even kind of getting that national following because they combine that performance aspect, right, that entertainment aspect with the baseballs. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, Savannah Bananas are probably the most popular, if not the most popular minor league team at this point in time. I don't know if anyone caught it, but they're doing a major league tour, and I know they sold out Minute Maid Park in Houston, and they're at Fenway. So like, if you want to talk minor league baseball, and I think what would be a great case study that I might have to try to weave into my course teachings for a class for the fall, but the Savannah Bananas, man, the way they kind of, like you said, combine that performance element with baseball is definitely unique. And I think that's why it has kind of exploded, because they're really going after the family aspect, but they're doing it in a fun, unique way where it's not just let's play baseball and in between innings we'll have kids run around and do a relay race or some kind of fantasy giveaway, but really kind of adding that performative element. I don't know if anyone caught this, but a while back on social media was a clip of, I think it was the catcher, and the catcher would catch the ball, and then before you throw it back to the pitcher, he would kind of do a little shimmy and dance move. And so I think that's just kind of an element of adding performance and getting people involved. And, it's fun for the family, it's fun for kids. But the kind of double-edged sword there is, I know there's some baseball purists out there who completely hate it, and they hate the performance. This is not real baseball. Whether you love it or hate it, I think you can't deny that it is having an impact on the game for the better, because I think, in my personal opinion, if you're getting more eyes on minor league baseball, whether it's something where it's traditional minor league baseball or something like Banana Ball that, barnstorms and rotates cities and, has fun with it, you're getting more exposure. And I think more exposure is good, because if you see the bananas on Twitter or on Instagram and you see a clip and you're like, that looks like fun, but unfortunately we don't live near Savannah, or we don't live near a stadium where the team's coming to. Oh, but by the way, we have this local minor league team down the park, or local minor league stadium down the road. They might not do it like the Bananas do it, but still kind of a fun time where you can still try to capture, a little bit of the spirit of minor league baseball, even if you can't go to a Bananas game. So I am definitely interested to see kind of what future direction it goes. And Ryan, I'll do a little ESPN plug. I know ESPN did correct me if I'm wrong, maybe like a year or two ago, but a really great piece on the owner, Jesse. I'm blanking on his last name. But
Yeah,
ESPN. Yeah.
Yeah, we
Yep.
did a Savannah Bananas documentary a year ago, and we actually carried one of their games on ESPN2. This was 2 summers ago. Yeah, and so his book came out just a month or 2 after my book came out, and we were both thankful it didn't drop on the same around the same time. But they're they're the Harlem Globetrotters is who they are, and they have fallen into this category of entertainment that, yes, it's a baseball team, but and the kids love it. And so you talk about an experience, that's who they are now. If you've ever seen the Harlem Globetrotters, and I have multiple times, I saw them in Cameron Indoor when I was a kid, they're amazing. And they're still amazing. They've been amazing for 80 years. And so I think that's who the Bananas are and who they're going to be. And I'm with you, because there's a spinoff effect to that. There's a ripple effect to that. And if they're coming to a minor league ballpark near you while they're on the road, and it's the first time you've ever been there, you're probably going to come back and go to, to see the actual home baseball team. So I remember years ago seeing the Savannah Cardinals, and they were a Sally League team, and they played in this modified football stadium. And I want to say the left field line was like 200 and something feet. So guys hit home runs all the time. But the Bananas have they found this niche, and they're helping everyone. And so, yeah, but listen, it's the internet. Everybody hates everything, right? If we're at the beach, it's too hot. If we're in the mountains, it's too cold. So if you don't enjoy the Savannah Bananas, fine. That just means there's a ticket for the rest of us, because right now it is really hard to get a ticket.
Well, very good kind of encapsulation there from the time, Ryan, when you were working with, marketing in that pre-social media era, to kind of drawing that all the way through line to now, where you're just on Instagram and there are the Savannah Bananas. So All right, before we get to audience Q&A, so this is my last little plug. If you've got a question for Ryan or Nick, please make sure you put that in the Q&A. I can see that we have quite a few already, so that's great. But Ryan, is there anything that you're currently working on in terms of like books or upcoming pieces for ESPN? Anything that you're working on that you want to share with us?
Well, I appreciate that, and we're kind of noodling a couple of book ideas for the next one, which hopefully we always say if you write one book, the goal is to get to do another one. So hopefully we're closing in on a couple of ideas right now. But I would just say that hope you enjoy the book, and use that as a reason, because it's really why I wanted to do it. I say all the time, it's a love letter to minor league baseball. So I'm looking at the towns where everyone's checking in from. There's a team near you, and we're so fortunate to live in North Carolina where we can get to a team really quickly. I mean, listen, I'm sitting at the coast right now at Sunset Beach. There's an independent minor league team just up the road in Wilmington. There's a really beautiful ballpark in Fayetteville. The Myrtle Beach Pelicans are right down the road to the south. You can get to a minor league game really easily. And so I would just say if you have experienced it, then you know what I'm talking about. And if you have a local team, support them, but go check out the other ones too. And in the meantime, maybe find somewhere you've never been. It's a good time and it's cheap. And I just appreciate everyone's enthusiasm for the book. The big thing for me is during my travels, like I say, the part I was most nervous about was I going to do right by the people who have made this their life's work? And knock on wood, most of the people who I've interacted with when I'm traveling and I go to minor league ballparks, that's been the most fun part. I used to be able to go to these parks and just kind of chill and sit in the cheap seats and not know about it. Now, if I post something on Twitter, Instagram, whatever, someone from the team will come find me and we'll usually end up talking about the book. And then they'll tell me a story that's so much better than my stories because they've been doing it for so long. So that's what I would say is support minor league baseball, and a ticket is a vote. If your town has a team, or if your town wants a team, or if your town has an independent team and you want a team that's affiliated with Major League Baseball, right now it's kind of a tenuous time because Major League Baseball a couple of years ago took over operations, and they're saying you better prove that you're worthy of this team. So if you want your team to stay, or you want to have a team in your town and you have an opportunity, support whatever the movement is, and you'll get them. And in the meantime, I mentioned social media. I'm at ESPN McGee. I'm always working on something. My current story on ESPN.com is about my alma mater, the Tennessee Volunteers winning the College World Series on Monday night. You'll be proud of me, Melissa. I covered it as an impartial member of the media, Nick. But as soon as my editor said you're clear, I put this hat on and I went and found my orange people, and we actually celebrated.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on that. And thanks for letting us know kind of what you're up to. So, Nick, same question to you. Any fun classes that you're teaching or community projects you're working on? What are you working on?
So I'm very excited at High Point. We're actually launching a partnership. I don't know if anyone is familiar, a little non-baseball related, but High Point just got a soccer team this year called the Carolina Core, and their minor league soccer team that ironically actually plays in the same ballpark, Truist Point, where the High Point Rockers play. So, if you're interested in, conversions of how they'll do baseball one day, flip it for soccer. But yeah, the university, in particular the School of Communication, we just formed a partnership with a soccer team. They're new in town. They're looking for marketing. And, it'd be very interesting to kind of see the differences between marketing on the baseball side versus the soccer side. But we have a partnership where we're able to funnel some of our students there for internship opportunities and freelancing on the media side. I know we have a couple people interning this summer and they're broadcasting the games. Someone's running camera. We have someone on the social department. So yeah, I'm just very excited. I think like we said and echoed all throughout the program tonight, minor league sports are awesome. And Ryan summed it up best, like go support a game. Obviously we're talking about baseball and, minor league baseball is in full swing this time of year, but, any minor league sport is, in my opinion, really, really fun to watch. And you don't have to be into it. You don't have to necessarily be a baseball fan or a soccer fan or a hockey fan. Just go out, enjoy the communal element. You're going to have people there, from your community, and they're going to be supporting a common cause. And, also from what Ryan mentioned earlier, when you have ticket sales and you're supporting, you're going to help keep that team there. And I think like you kind of lose something as a community if you had a long history of having a minor league team and then, one day Major League Baseball comes and yeah, we're going to pull it and move it somewhere else and build a brand new ballpark. You kind of lose that fabric. You kind of lose, something special that people can connect with and people have that crosses generations. In that question that you mentioned earlier. So I think like whatever you can, support your local teams because it's one of those things like you don't know what you have until it's gone. And if the minor league team leaves town and you never went, you're gonna probably wish that you did, and probably like, oh man, I wish I should have went to those games while I had the chance. So if anyone out there in the viewing audience is looking for a fun summer activity, check out what sports are around you, and go have a good time with the family.
Yeah, I can definitely say our audience is. I see a lot of great comments about how they got inspired by Ryan's book to go pick the family up, take them around to some minor league sports events, baseball events,
Awesome.
one of the first
Awesome.
games. So
We love to hear it. Yeah.
has inspired quite a bit of our audience here. So speaking of which, I know they have quite a few questions. So I'm going to summon the voice from beyond, my colleague, Caitlin, and she's going to read off some audience questions for us. Caitlin, what do you got for us?
Well, we have a lot of questions from folks here tonight, and I think there's a couple all grouped together. Folks are really interested in your writing process, Ryan. They love that you've had this kind of collection of memorabilia, and there was some curiosity if there was a story that you wish you'd included in the book that didn't have room, something else in that sort of box of memories.
It's a great question, and thank you everyone for reading the book and supporting the book. But yeah, so this has happened to me twice now because I've kind of done two. You're not supposed to use the word memoir anymore for whatever reason in publishing, but that's what these are. And I wrote a book with my dad a couple of years ago about his days as a college football official. And every time I'm with my dad, he'll tell another story. I'm like, Dad, that should have been in the book, man. And now what's happened with this book is the people that I worked with, they knew I was working on the book. I communicated with them. A lot of the names in the book, R.J. Martino and the McKee family, and Gary and Eileen Saunders, and Carlton Adcock and Steve Swish. I still keep track with all of them. And I had dinner with Gary and Eileen Saunders back in February. I was down in Florida, and Gary's still the voice of a minor league baseball team down in Bradenton. And I had dinner with them, and they told like 5 stories. I'm like, about me. And I was like, that should have been in the book. But the big one is we used to Jane Exner, Jane Lentz in the book. Jane ran Outback Food Services, our concessions arm. She was, I love her, still love her to this day. I was texting with her just the other day. And I had dinner with Jane right when the book was coming out. And she reminded me, we used to give out, Jane and I did, quietly, privately, we used to give out what we called the Lamont Award. And if you ever watch the old show Sanford and Son, the dad would always yell at his son Lamont, "You big dummy, you big dummy." And so the Lamont Award was for the big dummy of the week. And it might be the guy who delivered 5 kegs of beer that were completely flat. Or it might be, the woman from the local church youth group who tried to order 75 cheeseburgers in the 8th inning of the game. Just somebody got the Lamont Award for being the big dummy of the night. And she still had the list that we had made. And so when she showed that thing to me, I was like, this could have been a whole chapter of the book, because stories just started rushing back to me about all the various Lamonts of the summer, the big dummies. And so, yeah, it was, that's probably if I can go back and do it. But yeah, but to the question, absolutely. Every time I talk to anyone that I worked with that summer, and a lot of people that quite frankly I forgot, that will reached out to me on social media, go, dude, don't you remember I was the one that sold the hot dogs in the concession stand at so-and-so? And so it's been fun reconnecting, but it also makes me feel bad because I left some people and some stories out.
Yeah, bound to happen, but good to hear about what could have been an additional bonus chapter in Welcome to the Circus of Baseball. So Caitlin, what else do we have?
Yeah, we'll keep going. And I also want to mention you got a shout out for your narration and the audiobook version
Thank you
as well. So
that was hard.
Yeah, but you're such a great storyteller. I think it just captured in your voice as well. So folks are really loving all you have to share. A related question that came in was just saying that there's so many characters that have been kind of drawn to baseball, and that every town has their baseball characters. They're asking if you had any thoughts about something about baseball in general, or what draws people to this kind of a life.
Well, I think it's the character again. And it's also feeling like you belong. To me, one of the great things about sitting in a grandstand, particularly at any sporting event, but particularly a minor league baseball game, is it crosses all social lines. It crosses all cultural lines. It doesn't matter what your house of worship. It doesn't matter where you grew up. It doesn't matter the color of your skin. Everybody's just hanging out and watching sports. I believe that about sports in general, but particularly in minor league baseball, because it is so accessible. And what's fun is, again, in the travels that I've had since the book has come out, is talking to the people that work, and they're like, oh yeah, so I write about a guy named James the Mountain Man. And James the Mountain Man would show up at the ballpark. Folks don't know, McCormick Field in Asheville is literally carved into the side of a mountain in downtown Asheville. And James the Mountain Man was exactly like, if you were making a movie about the mountains and you were like making kind of a caricature of a mountain man, James was. James wore the overalls with no shirt. We had to tell him to put shoes on, and I never said more than 3 or 4 words, but James would show up every night with his canvas bag and his overalls, and he would climb up behind the fence down the right field line, which is a green monster size, 30-foot tall, 35-foot tall fence. And he would climb around back there in the kudzu. And I'm a big Star Wars guy. And I said it looked like Dagobah, right? The planet that Yoda was from. It's just swampy, and there's just all this stuff. And James's job was to collect baseballs. So during batting practice, players would hit balls out, and you'd hear James back there sloshing around, stomping around, and he would come out after batting practice with a bag full of baseballs. And my boss, Ryan McGee, would buy the baseballs back from him and would give him different varying amounts of money based on how clean or how dirty the baseball. They'd either go back into the bin for baseballs for games, or the bin for baseballs for batting practice, or the bin for baseballs for giveaways or whatever. But James routinely, the rule was we pay for the baseballs and he could keep and eat whatever he caught. Can you imagine what was back there? And so, I tell the story in the book. He came out one day and he's talking to me and he's like, hey, how you doing? Whatever else. And I was, well, James, get a lot of baseballs? Oh yeah, I got a lot of baseballs. And all of a sudden I'm like, damn, James, there's a snake on you. And there was a snake on his arm while he was talking. And it was wrapped around his arm, and he pulled on it, and that snake was bit into him. And he just pulled it off with a pop, and he spun it around and broke its neck and threw it in the bag. And so he come out of there with skunks and squirrels and raccoons and whatever else, jackalopes, who knows. But the rule was, it's like animal control. He could take them out with him. So I would go around, I go to minor league ballparks now, and people will say, hey, we don't have James the Mountain Man, but, we've got Grady the Desert Guy. Everybody has a guy that just hangs around at the ballpark. And to me, that's the beauty. But again, everyone who works in minor league baseball could write this book. You can make a movie. I mean, the characters, you literally, you can't make them up, and you don't have to, because they already exist.
Any thoughts to round that out, Nick? Characters in and among the baseball stadiums.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the beauty of it. Like, the anecdotes from James, and just kind of like Ryan, I think you described like some of the concession workers who were they like summer help and high school kids. And yeah, I think that's a great opportunity if anyone has high school age kids out there and they're looking for a fun little summer job. Working minor league sports at any level is just a fun way to kind of hang out. And I think Ryan had a lot of great memories from his experience. And, if you are a character and you have a little job here, the concession stand or the field crew, making a couple extra bucks on the side, but getting to spend it around a ball club and be around a baseball stadium like that, to me, very, very fun summer.
For sure. It definitely seemed that way. All right, Caitlin, I think we've got some time for some more audience questions, so we'll keep them coming because our great audience keeps them coming.
Yeah. So this one's a bit more of a serious question. But they ask, you mentioned the discussion about the battle for the soul of minor league baseball with profits versus entertainment. Teams like the Bananas have stormed the country, focusing strongly on entertainment, but it seems that ownership for most teams is leaning hard into the profits. Curious to hear your thoughts on where this battle stands today.
We're in the middle of it. I mean, this is, I mean, as I tell you all this, we just received the news that the Charlotte Knights, which I'm a season ticket holder with the Charlotte Knights were just sold to a group in New York that owns multiple teams. The good news is they've already said the front office staff, particularly the legend, the president of that team, Dan's going to get to stay in that job, which is great. I think is important. But it's, during COVID, the contract expired between what they called the National Association, which was the kind of the governing body for minor league baseball, and their contract with Major League Baseball. The National Association were the official Major League Baseball associated teams, but they weren't owned and operated by the Major League teams. They were contracted. That contract expired, and Major League Baseball decided to bring that in-house. So Major League Baseball runs minor league baseball now. They have a separate group that does that. And I wrote a pretty extensive story about a year ago, I believe it was July of last year, for ESPN.com, that we wrote in conjunction with, to help me promote the book, but it also was about this. And this is what they've experienced in Asheville. And Asheville was my primary, jumping off point to write this story. If you Google me and minor league baseball and Major League Baseball, you'll probably get it. It will probably pop up for ESPN.com. But it's about that. And so example, several of you have put in the chat tonight about the Kannapolis Cannonballers. They open a brand new ballpark that cost millions of dollars. And before they played a game, because they didn't play in 2020 because of the pandemic, before they played a game, they already had to go back and spend several more $1 million making these mandatory improvements for Major League Baseball, or they're going to lose their team. And some of it needed to happen because some of these ballparks were in terrible shape. Some of these, but particularly with the Appalachian League, which is the northern part of North Carolina and all through Southern Virginia and East Tennessee, those ballparks, a lot of those were in bad shape, needed help. But to say if you don't fix this and it costs you $15 million and you're going to lose your team, and for the teams to go, well, no, wait a minute, I've got to go through politics. I go to the city council, I go to the county council, I got to figure out how to pay for this. And it's like, well, this is your deadline. You either make it work or you don't. And in Asheville, they had that battle. And, luckily they saved it. Hannah mentioned the fact that literally as soon as the season ends, they're going to have bulldozers in there because they're going to start making improvements to the ballpark and expanding the ballpark because Major League Baseball told them to do it. So it is a tenuous time, to say the least. The good news is the roughest part of that seems to have passed. But yeah, you have to make money. I mean, it's simple. My concern is if you have groups, because there were rules that you couldn't do this before, you could only own a certain number of teams. If there's a group out of New York that owns a bunch of minor league teams in the Southeast, and none of those people have ever been to the Southeast, and these people at Major League Baseball have never been to Kannapolis, never been to Fayetteville, never been to Kinston, never been to Asheville, never been to these places to see how much it means. That's the part I worry about. But you got to make money. I mean, and this is why I say what we said, Nick and I both said earlier, a ticket is a vote. You need to go, you need to buy a ticket, you need to buy some concessions, you need to buy a t-shirt, you need to make sure you're showing the support for your team, because if you give them an excuse to move that team, they'll do it. And the best way to keep them from doing that is to support the effort to keep it, and that is to buy tickets and go to games. And there's worse things to do, man. Just spend $30 and go to the game, and you probably get to do it some more.
Nick, any kind of thoughts you want to add to that? Or if not, that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, just to quickly echo kind of Ryan's sentiment, like you said, with Major League Baseball's overhaul, it kind of has shifted a little bit of the power dynamics there. And, I think like for some ballparks, like you said, the improvements are, going to be warranted. But, I think for anything like he mentioned, the leagues don't really, I don't want to say they don't care about the fabric of the community, but, to Ryan's point, they can up and move and, oh, you don't have the funds to pay for this. And, we're going to deem that you must do this to your ballpark or else we're going to leave town. And, I do think it's a shame when a lot of those smaller areas lose their teams, because you're losing something that, may have been around for a while. And it's, something that can bring people together from a generational gap. So yeah, once again, I mean, I've said it before, but go support whatever team is local to you, because I think, you'll have a good time and you'll also be helping to keep that team right there in your community.
Good. Thanks for adding that. All right, Caitlin, do we have more questions?
We do. So here's a question that's kind of fun. And I'm going to combine it with a couple similar ones. So I loved Welcome to the Circus of Baseball, the stories of Julio the Cat, the Brawley mascots, Captain Dynamite. And the question is, do you think the passing of Julio the Cat was any sort of sign or omen for you to take the job with ESPN? And the related question is, what do you love about your job now with ESPN?
All right. So for folks that haven't read it, and thank you so much, Julio was the ballpark cat. We had some rain, and we thought rain was coming. And for folks that have worked at ballparks, even your local American Legion field, you put out this stuff called speedy dry, and you do it as a precautionary measure ahead of time, and it soaks up water. We thought we were going to get some rain. We put out speedy dry without any supervision. The interns did. We put out way too much. It's basically kitty litter. I mean, it's just smashed up corn cobs and sand and stuff that absorbs water. Well, we came to the ballpark the next day, and there were dozens of these feral mountain cats rolling around and using the bathroom and doing whatever else. And so, you cat people, that's fine. But it flipped us out. Well, we ran them all off except for this one cat, orange cat. And for whatever reason, he started following me around. So I started calling him Julio because, Julio down at the schoolyard. Well, this is, I literally started talking about cats and my dog started barking. But yeah, so Julio was the ballpark cat. And Julio was, Julio, unfortunately, we lost Julio toward the end of the season. But yeah, literally, I got my job offer from ESPN right after that. So I think that Julio was just saying, listen, I don't want you to stick around here just for me. You should move to Connecticut. So yeah, maybe that's what was happening. I never thought about it that way.
That does seem like a bit of an omen. So, and I think the second part of that question was, so since Julio gave you his blessing to go up to Connecticut, that obviously leads to you taking a job at ESPN. So what is your favorite part of your career now?
Listen, my dream was to get paid to go to sporting events. I mean, Nick, I don't know how you felt, but I was, my dad was a college football official. I had my first sideline credentials for a North Carolina, Virginia football game when I was 12 years old. And I remember specifically looking around at everyone on that sideline and thinking, everyone here is getting paid to be here. Whether it was someone working at the stadium or working for University of Virginia, University of North Carolina, or if it was the people selling hot dogs, or if it was all the media members that I saw, the reporters, the photographers, the writers. And I thought, all these people get paid to go to this football game. How do I get to do that? And so that's my way of saying I've been working for ESPN now for to be 30 years in August. The story I tell in the book about when I left Asheville, it was August of 1994. I can't believe it. I can't believe I get to do what I'm doing. I got to cover the College World Series, which I grew up watching on television. And don't tell anyone, but they pay me in American dollars. Like I get checks in the mail, from an employer for doing that. So yes, that's a way of saying I love it. Listen, work is work. I still have to do paperwork, and I still have to be on Zoom calls, and I still have to be in meetings. I still do all these things that none of us want to do with our jobs. But the payoff is that I do get paid to go to sporting events and interview athletes and coaches and write about it. And it's what's the old saying about, if you love what you do, it's not work. And I love what I do. So I'm very, very fortunate. And I'm very fortunate too, that people buy the book, Welcome to Circus Baseball, or they read my stuff on ESPN.com, or they listen to Marty McGee Saturday morning, 7 a.m., 10 a.m. Eastern, ESPN Radio. Y'all make sure to do that. But I'm very fortunate that what I do is supported to some level. And so, yeah, I love my job. I hope you can sense that when I talk about it, because I literally cannot believe that I get to do it.
Yeah, yes, definitely the passion shines through, Ryan. So. All right, Caitlin, do we have maybe another question? I think I see some more popping in here.
Yeah, we do have a couple more. Trying to figure out, it's so hard to pick. There's so many here, but there, I think, are a couple that are sort of on your origin story, Ryan, of wondering, what drew you to the University of Tennessee? And when you're talking about your passion for sports, what drew you into communications instead of something like sports management?
It's a great question. When people ask me where I'm from, I say I'm from North Carolina. I was born in Rockingham. I'll be buried in Rockingham. My family we still own the family home place there. My brother, by the way, his name is Sam McGee. He wrote a book a couple years ago called Cartley's Creek, and it's a pretty true to historical fiction story about our family and the Civil War and all the things that happened there in Richmond County, just up the road from where I am. And so we're North Carolinians, right? Lived in Shelby, lived in Raleigh the longest. But I ended up at the University of Tennessee. And Tennessee doesn't like to hear this, but it turned out great. We moved to Greenville, South Carolina, right at the end of high school. So during my junior year of high school, which is not any fun when you move in the middle of high school. And Greenville, by the way, love it. It's so cool now, right? Greenville, South Carolina. It wasn't that cool when we moved there in the 80s. And so I don't want to be there, but it made it very difficult for me to come back to North Carolina and go to college, being out of state. And so I grew up a huge North Carolina State fan, grew up in Raleigh. My dad worked at Meredith College right across the street from NC State. And so Tennessee reminded me of state. That was a big reason. My dad officiated a football game, Duke at Tennessee. Duke beat Tennessee, by the way. But I visited the school and loved it because it reminded me of Raleigh and of state. And the schools are still very similar. But that's how I ended up at Tennessee. But lived in Knoxville for 4 years college, lived in Connecticut for 2 years at ESPN. Other than that, 6 years of my 53 were spent somewhere else, and 2 of those were in Greenville, South Carolina, Traverse Rest, which is basically in North Carolina. So I've lived in North Carolina my whole life, and but it's I think the second half of the question was about why not sports management. Again, my dad was also, his day job was a college administrator. He worked at Meredith College, Gardner-Webb, Furman, was the president at Wingate University for almost 25 years, and I kind of got a behind the curtain view of Nick, of how an athletic department works, and was able to work in press boxes as a kid. I worked for the Furman Radio Network at Wingate. I did ad sales, I did radio, and I learned very quickly that the communication side of it, for me, the sports writing, the broadcasting, for me, was a lot more fun than the management side of it. That was underlined during my time with the Asheville Tourists, though I do appreciate it certainly more than I would have otherwise. But I just love TV, man. I was very fortunate. When I was in Raleigh, I went to Enloe High School. This is in the 80s. And Enloe was one of the very few schools, like maybe 4 in the country, that had a television production department, which is why I went to Enloe. I lived on the north side of town and bust in to go to Enloe. I love television production, still love it to this day. I became a sports writer as a spinoff from, working in sports broadcasting. And so I love TV production. I love to write. That's my favorite part of TV production, always was. And so yeah, management, no one wants to work for me. Come on, man. You kidding me? I was a manager for a minute when I worked at NASCAR for a split second. I realized very quickly I'm much better taking orders from someone else and doing something with that than managing anything. I can't manage myself. You see the inside of my truck right now. I shouldn't be managing anything, sports or otherwise.
Thank you for sharing that, Ryan. Nick, tell us a little bit about what led you to sports journalism, because you're both working in kind of these similar fields. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So like Ryan, it was kind of growing up and, you going to sporting events and you're kind of seeing all the behind the scenes, but you're seeing like, hey, wait, you're getting to get paid to be here. For me, though, it was really about like the storytelling aspect. And, I gravitated toward journalism first. When I was in high school, I was fortunate enough to go to a high school with a journalism program and, throughout college. But yeah, for me, it was the storytelling aspect. And then I just kind of happened to be a sports fan at the same time and, found that, athletes have really interesting stories. Like everyone has a story, but, athletes have these stories. And although the stories that often get told by, mainstream publications and in newspapers, about what happened in the game, but I kind of took it in a different direction. I love to go a step further and I love to focus more on the human interest element and, like what makes this person tick or, what was it about this relationship that, a high school basketball player had with a coach or a mentor or, someone early in life that, has shaped that person into the player that he or she is. So yeah, for me, it was a little bit about the storytelling aspect and then kind of marrying those two concepts. But I was a little bit different whenever I first started covering sports throughout college and then after working for a small community newspaper. I kind of learned to unplug a little bit. And, I hate to say this, but I'm not as big of a fan of the teams I grew up rooting for anymore because, you kind of get here's how the sausage is made a little bit type of perspective. But, I still love, I working as a college professor now, I love college athletics. And I know, the landscape of college sports is drastically changing with NIL, but there's still something pure about it, and I work for a school that we're in the Big South Conference. So, we don't have a lot of NIL money flowing in, a little bit for men's basketball, but, not much, if any, for the other sports. But yeah, I think there's still that kind of pure element to it that's great. And you get to have these stories with athletes. You get to, if you are a fan of a small college, you get to go and, experience a game day, much like minor league baseball, where you can go and hang out with people. It's family friendly, it's affordable. So for me, that's kind of how I got into the sports journalism aspect. And, teaching was always something that I loved. I was a little bit different, where a lot of people in my position have extensive professional work experience and then go back to graduate school. I did a little bit different, where I, graduated from a master's program, worked for a year, and then I was like, you know what? I should go back to school now while I'm still used to being a student. And so I kind of went back for the PhD shortly thereafter. But yeah, I think that's what's great about, any type of discipline, whether it is sport management or sport communication. If you're, high school student who is thinking about majoring in it, you're going to learn from people who have been in the field, people who have done this stuff, people who have read extensively about it, people who have industry connections. So kind of not like finance, where you're just like learning from a textbook and, plugging some numbers into a calculator, but like you're actually getting hands-on stuff, which I think is a great major for someone who, is very into that type of work.
Yeah, I think that is a great way to kind of bring all of our conversation sort of back full circle, right? Because Ryan's experiences in Welcome to the Circus of Baseball were definitely hands-on. So, Ryan, any last kind of thoughts you want to share with our audience? Anything else to wrap up Welcome to the Circus of Baseball?
Yeah, well, I want to add the next point too. My favorite part of my job is the human part. And back in the day they called it new journalism, and now it's kind of becoming a lost art. And I feel like the way that I cover events, like if you read the story I wrote Monday night for ESPN.com when Tennessee won the national championship at the College World Series, my alma mater aside, to me the story, there's not much in that. I wrote 1,500 words. There's not much in that story about the actual game. It's about the people who are watching the game, and it's about the people who are finally relieved that their school finally won a national championship after being so close so many times, and the relief in that, and also the pain felt by the team that lost. And to me, that's the part of it that maybe gets lost, because our jobs, to me, as a sports writer and as a reporter, is there's only a few of us to get to be there. So it's our job to make sure that everyone else gets to read something, watch something, experience something that makes them feel like they were there. And the way you feel like you were there is you get to know the people who were participants. And to the point too, I showed the Tennessee hat, but I said it wasn't until the editor says I was clear that I celebrated my alma mater winning that championship. Because Nick knows this. I talk to journalism class all the time at different schools. The number one, when we do Q&A, the number one question is, and it's always, it's from college students, from 21-year-olds. How do you not care about the outcome of the game? Because you don't. Part of that is getting older. I'm a Red Sox fan. I can't tell you half the starting lineup anymore. But you also learn how to check it at the door. And I mentioned my dad a lot. He taught me that as a sports official, because when he walked onto the field to officiate a game, how he might have felt about that school when he was 18 years old, that didn't matter. It's just because you're just there to cover the event. And so I think it's supportive. But to me, when I cover the event, my editors will have to remind me to watch the game, because a lot of times if you watch me in the press box, I'm looking at the sideline, or I'm not even in the press box. I'm down in the grandstands looking for people to talk to. And so to me, that's the event. And I learned that from being in the tunnels and the bowels and the beer cooler at McCormick Field, that's where the story is, right? None of this happens if it isn't for what's taking place down there. And so, but thank you to everyone for those who've read the book, those who've listened to the book. I can't thank you enough, because you do these things in a vacuum and then you put it out there and you hope that people enjoy it. And so to everyone who's had the kind words tonight, it truly means the world.
Yeah. Well, that is a really great way to wrap up this conversation, and I think really get at the heart of why sports are so important for so many of us, and the universal experience of being able to go sit at that minor league stadium or attend that game with family, whatever it might be. We're there, we're connecting with each other, we're connecting with the players, we're making memories. That's really what it's all about. So I want to say thank you to you, Ryan and Nick, for your conversation this evening, and also to Hannah for sharing about McCormick Field. I hope after everything you've heard tonight, you'll be able to attend a game this season. It sounds like many of you are, whether it be in Asheville at the Tourist or at a ballpark somewhere near you, or maybe somewhere far from you if you have a whole list that you are trying to visit. So thank you to our wonderful audience for attending and for asking such great questions this evening. We appreciate your time and engagement. After the conclusion of this event, those of you who registered with an email address will receive a brief survey to complete. We would greatly appreciate you completing this survey to hear your feedback on this program. You can visit our website at www.nchumanities.org and subscribe to our email newsletter to stay up to date with all NC Humanities news and programs. I would say definitely keep your eyes out for forthcoming news this summer about North Carolina Reads 2025. So keep your eyes out for that. Thank you again for attending and for making our 2024 North Carolina Reads a success. So have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.